Shalom, ladies and jellyfish. So, Kamp Koral, one of the most controversial Nick decisions in a long time, and one with a lot of background. This review is going to be solely based on my opinions on the first 6 episodes that have come out so far, and I honestly don't really care to get into the politics and controversy behind Hillenburg's involvement in this. We know he was likely alive when this was pitched, but he was growing sick by that point. The concept for this could have heavily evolved since then, and none of this is super reliable data anyway, so let's just judge this as a show alone and leave it at that. With no further ado, I watched Kamp Koral, so you don't have to, so please be sure to hit that subscribe button, and with that, let's jump into this. So overall, I'm not a very big fan of this if I'm going to tell you the truth. I'll start off with the main difference between this and the main show, the premise. This show takes place in summer camp, or Kamp Koral, back when SpongeBob and his friends were young kids. I think the setting of the camp is really cool, and personally I'm into the whole cabin aesthetic, but the characters themselves aren't really different at all apart from the animation. While they obviously look different, although not very much, and we'll get to that in a minute, all the characters are basically voiced and written the exact same way as their adult counterparts. SpongeBob is just as jovial and enthusiastic, Squidward is just as cynical, Patrick is just as brain dead as season 7 Patrick, and Sandy's not any less smart than the scientist she turns into decades later. The problem with this is this concept gets old really fast when the only thing setting it apart is the animation. Kamp Koral is basically
SpongeBob characters, but cuter.
I guess I'm glad that they kept some voice actors like Tom Kenny, because if they brought a younger voice actor along, it would probably go on your nerves pretty quickly. But the voice actors barely even changed the voices aside from a few pitch changes. Characters like Squidward are the exact same. Rather than take advantage of this concept and make Squidward happy and nice, they choose to be lazy and make him just an annoying version of his adult self. Because here, he doesn't really have a reason to be cynical, and that's my point. Imagine if here they made Squidward's nose smaller, made him super nice. That way, they could subtly show how working at the Krusty Krab and failing as a musician made him more cynical and pessimistic about life, hence the physical change in his nose as well. You know, pre-movie style. And if you think I'm just cherry-picking Squidward, don't even get me started on Patrick. He looks terrible, sounds terrible, and is completely brain dead. I mean, come on. The Bikini Bottom model looked 10 times better than this bland, smooth mess. As far as animation goes, I really like it for the most part. It's definitely not comparable to Sponge on the Run, as I think that movie made these characters a lot cuter, since that seems to be all that matters to these cookie cutter companies anymore. But back to this, I don't find too much wrong with it. Aside from SpongeBob sometimes being a little too sharp at the edges to the point where he reminds me of SpongeBob in Tehran, the animation and especially the backgrounds are pretty nice to look at. Although I'd be lying if I didn't say that at some parts the colors are super desaturated and would look a lot better with just some simple color correction. The theme song is also pretty good, which might be my most hot take here, but I'd much rather see some original stuff than just copying the old one and changing a few lyrics. This is a spin-off for a reason, don't expect them to keep everything the same. The animation of it is also very smooth, and I actually found it decently catchy. It doesn't even come close to the main show theme song, but it's definitely not terrible. The ending credits song is also nice, just being an instrumental of the theme song, I believe. Speaking of music, a lot of the original show's Hawaiian music is still here. In fact, some of them I listened for were new original covers of those songs, which is a really nice touch. There's also a lot of stock and classical music. Moving on, I think the one thing that might save this show from a bunch of criticism is that the original writers and crew are taking the helm of this, and they're not trusting a bunch of amateurs with this property. Definitely a respectable move, since the episodes are mostly written by Kaz, Doug Lawrence, Andrew Goodman, and Luke Brookshire, some of whom have been working on the show since the very beginning 22 years ago, but also wrote some mediocre episodes, so it's not exactly Meriwether-Williams level people, but it's not Zoo Service level either. However, I mean no disrespect to anyone working on this show, just going off the episodes they wrote and my personal opinions on them. In Kamp Koral specifically, their writing is pretty good. Not really hilarious, and I didn't find myself laughing at nearly the rate I do for seasons 1 to 4, or even the later seasons for that matter, so I think the comedy is definitely a working point for this show. I've seen some people complain about the continuity stuff, and honestly I'm not too butthurt over it. Obviously it's a bit jarring to think that these characters all happen to know each other well back in a summer camp, but it's something I'm willing to forgive if the show improves its quality from here onward. With that said, I'd probably give Kamp Koral a 5 or a 6 out of 10 so far, but I have high hopes for it that it can get better. It is obviously a very lucrative show, and there have been some dodgy things happening behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, I genuinely hope this show can improve and bring in a new generation of kids into the SpongeBob world in one way or another. And before I go, let me give a huge middle finger to Paramount Plus for making their Canadian version absolute dog crap, where it has literally no cartoons, so I spent much of Thursday, when I could have made this video come out sooner, trying to track people down and find clips of the show, but thankfully the fluffy legend himself, Mr. Nostalgia, lent a hand, or a feather, and gave me all of the episodes in HD so I could review it all for you. I'll leave a link to his channel below. Believe me, I got a bit of a surprise coming up involving him, so stick around for that. And another note, I've been thinking thinking of reviewing every episode of the show in 10 words or less, and also comparing this to Sponge on the Run, so let me know what you think of those two ideas in the comments. I also think this is the perfect time to announce that I have a big project coming up, where I rank every single episode of SpongeBob from seasons 1 to 12, or 1 to 11 if I'm too impatient to wait for all the episodes to come out, in 10 words or less, which has already accumulated 33 pages in Google Docs. That's gonna be fun to edit. With all that said, I appreciate your support, thank you so much for watching, and if you want Kamp Koral in HD for one reason or another, DM me on Twitter or Discord, and I'll send you a totally legal and definitely not pirated link to all these clips you saw today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you beautiful ladies and jellyfish next time. Shalom!